This is because they relate to what the speaker has in mind while speaking. Um, so yeah, it's like everything. Everything is somehow related with semantics and syntactics. Um, and then the we have like two main classifications within the reference of determiners, which is definite, indefinite, and specific, non-specific. Hacer una llamada. Definiteness. If definite, the speaker assumes that the referent can be identified. We can rely on the determiner being used most of the time. So by just looking at the determiner, we can tell if it's definite or not, right? That, this, that, these, those, my, your, his, all of these are almost all of the time definite. And indefinite, we have null, a, some, any, few, little, no. But there are some exceptions, right? That and I have that book. It refers to a copy of the book, not to that book specifically. The in the soul is the strength of the human. It's generic, so it's not definite, right? It refers to these nominals as if they were one thing, while implying that they are not, right? It signals what binds all of these units together. There may be many souls, strengths, and humans, but they are treated as one in this use of the determiner. Yeah, we have lots of these things, right? Souls and humans and strength, but we refer to it as if it was only one, right? The in you should go to the doctor. It's a case of a sporadic reference. It refers to the institution of the doctor and not to any doctor or a doctor at all, right? It's not like we're thinking about one doctor and we're referring to that doctor when we say the doctor. We refer to the institution of the doctor. So it is generic. It also has an idealist force, well, in this case, because of should, right? And then the in I went to the doctor. It's ambiguous. It may be generic, a case of a sporadic reference, like in the previous example, or actually refer to the doctor, a doctor that both the speaker and the hearer know about, right? That one doctor that we have talked about or that we have mentioned, or the family doctor, for example, right? So all of these are cases of definite articles being used in indefinite ways, right? With indefinite value. Then we have a specificity. If the determiner is specific, the speaker is referring to a particular entity, to a specific entity, be it an individual thing or a group, right? So it can also be plural, but the reference has to be specific. In this case, the determiner being used won't be as helpful as it is with identifying definiteness, right? So we will have to look at the context much more. This has to do with the fact, with what I said earlier, right? About how it's not just syntactic, it's not just about the word being used, but the way in which it's being used. So with definite, the referent can be identified, or at least the speaker thinks that the referent can be identified. And with specific, it refers to a particular entity. Indefinite determiners are not specific most of the time, right? But other elements in the syntactic structure have a role in the interpretation. So these elements that we have to look to identify specificness let's say, would be, we have three. One is the verb and factuality, that is, whether we're talking about something real or not, como para decirlo, forma burda. There we go. And adjectives. So with John has a flat is indefinite because it is a flat, right? A flat. But it is specific because we can tell that the speaker has in mind one specific flat, the flat that John has, right? Which is different from John would like to have a flat. In that case, still definite, is still indefinite, and is not specific because it's not real, right? We are not actually referring to one specific flat. It's just a flat, any flat that John would like to have, right? It's not his flat. Here's where it gets a little strange to me, the topic, but well, with, in the case of John has a flat with a balcony, we say that a balcony is not specific, and with a big balcony, it is specific. Because the more information we have about the nominal, the more specific we are about it, right? So you can imagine that the speaker has a clearer image of the nominal, in this case the balcony, if they say that it is a big balcony instead of just a balcony. That's the idea. To me, it sounds strange, but well. The more information you have, the more specific the reference is. And then another thing that we should look into would be subordination. In the case of defining relative clauses, these have a close relationship with a nominal, the same way adjectives do, right? They add information and thus they make it more specific. But they are different from prepositional phrases, right? So here we have John has a flat which has a balcony. In this case, it is specific. Well, this has to do with the fact that there's like an event, right? So we can say that the balcony is the one that John has. Well, the one that is in the one that the flat has in this case. Yeah. To me, it sounded strange because it doesn't seem to have any difference to say that something, something is with a balcony or something has a balcony. But, well, it seems that there is a difference, right, in terms of reference. So in the case of defining relative clauses, the reference is specific. Unless, of course, it is in an iRealist context, right? Like John would like to have a flat. It is an imaginary situation, him having a flat. Then we also talked about like a different classification that's still related, which is generic and unique reference. Generic reference is always indefinite, and it may be specific or not, though I think most of the time it's specific. It refers to a whole group, like in I like cats, or the invention of the car meant a turning point in history. Then we have unique reference, which is always definite and always specific, right? There's only one referent to this reference. The sun, the moon, the galaxy, the planet, the ocean. I mean, of course, we know that there are more suns and moons, but if we say the sun, we will always think about the referent that we have, the shared referent, right? The one we all have. Now, there's something interesting to like connect the topics, I think, which is reference, theme, and rime. In unaccusative predicates with expletive there insertion, the constituent with the theta role of theme can't be definite, right? So inaccusative predicates are something somewhere. That something can't be definite if there is expletive there insertion. Definiteness implies that the reference has been established, and thus that the constituent holds given information, which can't appear in ring position after the verb. There arrived some letters somewhere is correct. The letters arrived is also correct, but there arrived the letters is wrong. There's no reason why not to place given information, the theme, within the designated area for it, at the very beginning of the sentence, in a topic phrase, or in this case, the spec of TP, the grammatical subject position. So if we insert there in the spec of TP, we're implying that everything that follows is the rime, because the spec of TP is the default locus, place for the theme, and everything that follows it is the rime. And well, definiteness means that the reference is already clear, right? It is given information. And now I want to see marked constructions, which have to do with this theme and rime theme about topic. What are marked constructions? They are constructions which break the canonical orders. The canonical organization of the information is theme and then rime. And correspondingly, the canonical syntactic order is subject and then predicate. So we have the thematic positions, topic phrase within the CP, and spec of TP, which is the grammatical subject position. And then we have the rhematic positions, the focus phrase within the CP, and everything following the spec of TP. And well, here I want to see each case. We have fronting and inversion. With topicalization or fronting, well, these are processes that generate marked constructions because elements from a rhematic position, adjuncts and complements, move to a thematic one, the spec of topic phrase. And focalization and inversion takes this a step further through the projection of a phrase that surfaces before the default theme position, the spec of TP, and holds new information. So with topicalization and fronting, we change the syntactic order. We still have theme and then rime, but we have a larger theme, right? If I say, yesterday I went to the cinema, the theme isn't just I, it's also yesterday. But with focalization and inversion, what we do is, well, in most cases, just take out the theme completely, right? So never had I seen something like this. There's no theme there because never is new information. If we think about never, it will appear after the TP, right? After the spec of TP. It holds new information, and we make a point of it, right? We emphasize this new information, and thus everything that follows it is also seen as new in a way. Then we have passive voice. This is a case of a movement in which an argument, which isn't the external argument, that is, the argument that merges in spec of VP, of the predicate, becomes the theme of the sentence. So the external argument will always, well, in the canonical order, the external argument is the one that moves to spec of TP and becomes the grammatical subject and the theme of the predicate, right? Or the sentence or the clause. With the exceptions of the unaccusative predicates, right? The inherent and accusative and the ergatives, which do not have an external argument. So here I have an example of passivization. Unmarked would be my cousin killed my family. Unmarked would be my family was killed by my cousin. So here I highlighted the theme, right? Yeah. So my family emerges first as the complement of kill and then moves from there. My family was killed, my family. And then we can add as an adjunct the notional subject. Then, the argument that raises may be the external argument of a predicate in cases of long-distance passivization, right? So the argument that raises may be the external argument, but not of that same predicate. So unmarked, we have people said that my cousin killed my family, and marked version would be with a movement, right? My cousin was said to have killed my family. Or without a movement, it was said that my cousin killed my family. All right. Then we also have raising predicates with expletive insertion. The unmarked version would be they seem to know what they're doing with a movement. They merges in spec of the VP know, and then raises to the spec of seem, and then the spec of TP, right, of the main TP. And then the marked version has expletive insertion. It seems that they know what they're doing. So here is something pretty important. That's why I made the letters bigger. Structures with expletives will always be marked because the expletive occupies the spec of TP, leaving all that follows to be interpreted as new information. They will only have a theme if there's a constituent at spec of topic phrase, right? So yesterday, it seemed that they knew what they were doing, let's say. Yesterday would be the theme because it is in a topic phrase. And then we have the case that we see the most, I think. Well, I don't know if... No, just another case, really. Cleft and pseudo-cleft sentences. These are marked constructions that separate the complement from its predicate in their unmarked counterparts, right? And here I added the meaning of cleft, an opening made by splitting. So we separate the complement and the predicate. In a cleft sentence, we have the structure expletive it, be, nominal, and free relative. The unmarked version is I'm looking for love. The marked version takes a nominal and puts it as its focus, right? It's love that I'm looking for. The part that I want to focus the most on will be right after it will be the first part of the sentence that has meaning, right? Following the expletive and the be. And then the clause will be the post focus. I mean, in unmarked sentences, we go from new information. No, we go from given information to new. And the closer we get to the end of the sentence, the information is newer. But in marked sentences, it tends to be the other way around, kind of. All right. And then there's pseudo-class sentences. They consist of a free relative with what, who, or where, then be, and then a nominal. Unmarked, I'm looking for love. Marked, what I'm looking for is love. Love is what I'm looking for. And then we can also point out that pseudo-class sentences are equative nominative predicates, as we can see by the be and the two constituents with nominal distribution, the fact that you can swap their positions, and the fact that the nominals share the same reference. Okay. And okay, this is it for this slide. Now let's move on to...
I have a question.
Yes,
Hi,
please.
yes. I wanted to know where does it fit? It's love what I'm looking for.
Where? What?
In this, you mentioned before. Wait, a clap sentence which was "It's love that I'm looking for." What about "It's not what I'm looking for"? Is it a marked clap sentence too? Because you don't have a
Love is not what I'm looking for.
It's love what I'm looking for, instead of it's love that I'm looking for.
So it is a question, right? Sorry, don't understand.
Not the example. It's love what I'm looking for, instead of it's love that I'm looking for. It's
no,
I typed it in the chat.
Where did you find it?
I don't know, it just came out.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I was reading your example and then I thought about it's not what I'm looking for.
Here, it's neither a class sentence or a pseudo-class sentence. I think it's more like two sentences. Well, actually, it's like one sentence. I mean, it's love is one sentence, and what I'm looking for is another one, I think. Bueno, también lo podemos pensar en español. Es amor lo que estoy buscando.
Claro.
Como que ahí no estás diciendo amor es lo que estoy buscando o lo que estoy buscando es amor, sino que estás diciendo es amor lo que estoy buscando. Como que son dos estructuras distintas.
Pero no tiene nada que ver con esto de mark life sentence, ni mucho menos si es life sentence.
Creo que sí sería marked.
Porque la diferencia que en vez que sea that, es what. Que sí lo vi acá en el ejemplo que diste de zero clap sentence. What I'm looking for is love. Entonces, me entró la duda. ¿Dónde entraría esa oración?
El perro llorando. No, la verdad no sabría decirte. No es una estructura que estudiemos.
Ok, está bien.
no es ninguna de estas dos y no sé si iría marcada.
Bueno, dale.
Calculo que sí, porque it no tiene referencia. En todo caso, la referencia de it queda clara después, ¿no? Por eso me parece que sí sería marcada. Che, molesta, no me di cuenta que iba a tener la luz en la cara. Bien, ¿me puedes dar de comer al perro? No. Bueno. ¿Alguna otra duda? Igual siempre interrúmpame. Yo me meto con el tema y empiezo y ta, pero como que la gracia es que me interrumpan. Compartir. Movement. Bueno. Vamos a empezar con movement. Types of movement. We have two types. A-bar movement, the movement of constituents to a specified position within the left periphery, within the CP. These movements are not exclusive to arguments. Examples: topicalization, focalization, and WH relative operators to spec of force phrase or spec of focus phrase. And then we have A movement, the movement of arguments to a specified position within the functional TP and thematic VP domains. And these are exclusive to arguments. Example: any movement of a constituent towards subject position, right? Towards spec of TP. So clauses with WH relatives as subjects illustrate the difference pretty clearly. The A movement is in yellow. So defining relative: he's the person who, that, who, could, who, have, who, help us. So person who could have helped us. There's a spelling mistake there. So hold on. The movement towards the spec of TP, which is headed by could, ends there, right? Right in the last. Oh god, the last who is in the spec of VP. The second to last who is in spec of the spectral phrase with perfective value have, right? Perfected perfect value. And then we have could in the head of TP, and that would be the last A movement. The other one would be an A bar movement in spec of a force phrase, right? And then, well, the same happens with non-defining relatives. The neighbor I told you about yesterday, who has been found dead, was actually my brother. Well, the only difference here is that we have a passive voice, right? And then we have free relatives. Whoever you are, come out now. Yeah, the last movement where they land, the landing site, is a bar movement because it occurs in the CP. Then A movement. Now we're going to see the cases we focus the most on in Grammar 2. They are more complex because the argument doesn't merge in spec of the main VP and then moves to spec of TP. In the case we have already seen in Grammar 1, the argument merges as complement of the main VP and moves from there. Right? The case of unacusatives. Inherent unacusatives like go or stay, or ergatives. like die, let's say. Now, in the three new cases, the argument emerges from a position below in another VP, which is also selected by another TP, right? Where it obtains its thematic role and moves from there. So it's really important to always mention that. Thematic roles are obtained in the merging site once the argument emerges. And then, well, what may change during the movements, depending on the position, is the case. But the thematic role is always obtained in the VP where the argument merges. The main external argument position, the spec of VP, is dethematized because nothing merges there. Now, the case we have already seen in grammar 1, and accusative predicates, then a spectral and modal semi-auxiliaries, raising predicates, which also have expletive insertion, and predicates in passive voice, which have expletive insertion and long-distance structure. The verbal predicate, inherent in accusatives, two external arguments, theme and location, thematic roles, and ergatives with no agent. One external argument. Wait, hold on. It's not external. It is internal. There's a mistake here. Inherent and accusatives have two internal arguments, and ergatives have one internal argument, the theme. And, well, here I also added the be predicates. It's not something we see during the course, I think, or that it's mentioned as a case of exceptional A movement, let's say. The be predicates are said to be an accusative, but wow. The nominal, prepositional, and adjectival predicates whose argumental subjects merge in spec of PP, right? They do not merge in spec of VP. That's also why sometimes we don't draw the VP in be predicates with a specifier. So we can also say that the spec of VP is dethematized. If nothing merges there, then there's no theme to be assigned to anything. Now, with passive predicates, we have a classification, statal, which are, well, the example is the window is closed, and we can see that in the translation in Spanish, we use está. La ventana está cerrada. And we can also use C. Tiene un nombre este C. Como cuasi reflejo o algo así. O como un C pasivo, por así decirlo. La ventana se cerró, así, sola, por sí sola, ¿no? No es que alguien la cerró, sino que se cerró. La ventana está cerrada. There's no notional subject, and it is a stage-level adjectival predicate with terminal coincidence. That's also why we use está en español. If it has terminal coincidence, in Spanish, we'll see the difference if we use está or es. It was already broken when I got here. That's another example. And then actional. The window was closed by him. La ventana fue cerrada por él. There is a notional subject which can appear in a by adjunct. It is a verbal predicate. And it had already been broken by someone when I got here. So we will have to explain. I mean, in trees, we will only do actional passive predicates, I think. But anyway, I guess we could think of how we would represent statal predicates, right? We just have to think of closed, or, well, the how is it called? The yeah, the verb in the third column, which I do not remember now, as an adjective, right? The window is to closeness. Now, actional passives. The person and number features and the EPP, extensional projection principle, are satisfied by the movement of the direct object, which merges where it normally would in its active voice counterpart. This is something really important. If you have an actional passive, just think about that same predicate as active, but take out the subject. And then it's the same as usual. You need the EPP to be satisfied, and you need the person number features, and you need the agreement between the spec of TP, the grammatical subject, and the head of T, the head of TP, which is T. So what do you move? The object. So example, my house has been painted. I like using these examples with like at least one extra word within the DB. So my house was my house, the passive phrase for being, my house, then the verb painted, and then the object of the verb, my house. The grammatical subject's case switches from accusative to nominative once it lands in spec of DB. She was told to leave. She would merge in a position where she would acquire accusative case because it follows the verb and an accusative verb, tell. But since it moves, it acquires a nominative case in the spec of TP. The direct object can move in its entirety or only the subject of the embedded TP in the case of ECM verbs, like in he's expected him to him pass the exam. It's a long distance structure because we have an ECM verb. It is a long distance structure even though it doesn't have a finite clause, right? With long distance structures with WH relatives and with raising predicates, we have a clause, right? So here we have the man was believed to have been killed, and lots of movement. How fun. Anyway, now, long distance structures with ECM verbs. In most cases, reporting verbs will be used, but other verbs that take clausal complements, like fear, are also possible. With long distance structure, both the direct object or the subject may be raised. All right, so the subject of the main verb merges in the VP of the embedded non-finite clause. The clothes are theorized to have been worn by the queen. The letters are expected to arrive soon. Their structure, DP plus DP, with passive B, find it or not, the ECM verb, and then the TP with a non-finite predicate, and then the VP. Okay. Now, please do open your mic to speak if you have any questions. Past participle, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Thank you. Expletive insertion with ECM verbs. It is believed that the clothes have been worn by the queen. It is expected that the letters will arrive soon. So this is the expletive insertion version of these, of the previous sentences, right, of the previous examples. What we have here is that the expletive insertion stops the movement of what would normally move, right? The A movement. Because the expletive insertion, the expletive it selects a clausal associate. And there's this, well, I don't remember if I talked about this yesterday, but there are certain rules for when elements can move through move from a subordinate clause to the main clause, right? So WH relatives can move to the main clause, but first they have to move to a spec of force brace. But arguments cannot, right? Arguments in the case of passive predicates cannot. The verb structure of these examples is it plus finite be plus the verb, the EZM verb, and then the clause. The subject of the main verb is an expletive, which is referenceless and merges in spec of TP to satisfy EPP and to agree on all that happens in the EPP, right? in the TP. The verb in the embedded clause is, like in the long distance structure, the most significant semantically. Okay. Right. So arrive is more significant than expected, or warn is more significant than believe, right? It's just we use these more complicated structures to present the information in the main clause informationally, let's say, in a different way, right? Well, the same happens with, I don't know, I think the letters will arrive soon. I guess that what matters the most notionally is the information of the letters arriving. But I say I think to paint a certain picture, right? Then raising predicates. Let's move on to another type of a movement. They are the main verb grammatically. They're previous to the predicate they select and most likely finite. But they are not the main verb notionally. They are really light semantically and thus can't assign theta roles to their arguments. The embedded non-finite predication does. Examples: seem, appear, happen, occur. There are not many. And she seems to understand the problem equals she seems she understand the problem, right? So she semantically acquires the theta role in the VP headed by understand. But then she later moves upwards. And in the spec of seem, we wouldn't have any argument, and it wouldn't assign any theta role because it doesn't have much meaning. And we have a couple of structures with raising predicates as well. We can use there with a nominal associate. There seem to have been many problems. There seems to have been a problem. There has a nominal associate, and the agrees with number and person of that associate, right? There doesn't have any feature in of itself. And then it has a clausal associate. It seems that there's a problem. Well, it has a clausal associate, like in the case of expletive insertion structures with passive predicates. And well, it has the feature of third person and singular, right? And the last case is semimodal and semi-spectral auxiliaries. Well, modality is the way the speaker projects their intellectual subjectivity onto the text, their attitudes, in the case of the antic ones, and opinions, in the case of epistemic attitude, right? Epistemic modality. It expresses non-factuality. So we have a couple of examples here. Only these. Epistemic ability, fail or manage to do something, right? So I managed to help my mom. I helped my mom, right? Like that is the event, the most relevant event, let's say. But I want to add certain modality, a way to picture the event. So I say I failed to do it. Well, the antic obligation need to do something. I have to do my work. I need to do my homework. And then there's also need and there without to, right? We can say that these are further ahead in the process of grammaticalization since they had the TP. That's why we can say needn't, because need is in the head of T, and then the negative phrase with a not is right after it, right? It's pretty interesting, but well, it is a detail. As long as you recognize the verb as a semi-modal, I guess you can explain it the same way. Yeah, it's unlikely, but it is an interesting detail to see grammaticalization. And then we also have semi-spectral auxiliaries. As grammatical aspect is the way the internal constituency of the event is presented in the text. In these cases, there's special emphasis on the beginning, continuation, and future eventuality and frequency of repetition. So it is pretty different from other ways to express aspect, I think. We have ingressive that focalizes the beginning. Began, start to do something, doing something, or start doing something. Continuative, continue to do something. I continued. Yeah, continue, go on to do something, or go on doing something. Terminative, stop doing something, finished doing something. Perspective, I'm going to do something. And habitual, I tend to do something. And now a new topic. Let's see. Any questions? I'm gonna turn the light on. Crystal clear. Yeah. All right. Great. Okay. Let's continue with feature evaluation then. This is just, feature evaluation is something that is significant for basically every topic. But here I just wanted to put all the features together and see how they are valued, right? So we have in the spec of TP, unvalued tense. The constituent that merges expletives or moves to this position is going to be the grammatical subject, and it's going to agree with the. It's going to acquire nominative case if it has phonetic realization, right? It could not if it is a pro. Its merger or movement is going to be triggered by EBB. Well, I mean, I guess there is an exception to the agreement with there, right? They are seen to have many problems. Many problems will be the DP that agrees with D in that one case. But all the other cases, well. And then in D, we find EPP and unvalued person and number. Well, these go together, right? Yeah. Then, of course, in D, we also have tense, right? Time, aspect, and modality. And voice. Then, in the verb, we have valued tense and unvalued spatial relation. This is in the context of be predicates, right? And the preposition will have unvalued tense and valued spatial relation, right? Central coincidence or terminal coincidence. Well, and that's it. Now, let's see be and have predicates. We have nominal, which are always individual level predicates, central coincidence. And we have two subtypes. Sortal, the figure is one of the group encoded in the ground. Juan is a great friend of mine. So Juan is one of the group that can be said to be a great friend of mine. But it's not equal, right? And here I wrote, don't confuse these with adjectival predicates. A noun may have an adjective pre-modifying it, right? Here, I mean, I guess it is easy to differentiate them if you take the adjective out. If you find Juan is a great friend of mine and you don't know if it's adjectival or nominal, just take great and see, right? Juan is a friend of mine, and it still makes sense. Equative, the figure and the ground encode the same entity. I am Juan, Juan is me. We can switch the places of the figure and the ground, and the meaning will be the same, though the case may change. In this case, I is nominative because it merges in spec of the PP and then moves up to the spec of DP. But me, which has the same reference, is in the accusative case because it is the complement of the preposition. And it is Juan, the one that moves and acquires nominative case. Now, prepositional predicates. They are always stage-level predicates. And there are also two subtypes. Existential. The grammatical subject is expletive there, and the figure must be indefinite. The ground is frequently covered. So there is work to be done in class, let's say. Now, this, when we talk about the existence, when we want to say that something exists, we don't have a point, we don't have a theme, because just by mentioning the thing, we are introducing new information, right? That's the idea of saying that something exists. Once you mention it, you're already introducing new information. And then, well, the place may not be stated because it may already be clear by the context, right? The same with unaccusative predicates and the location in unaccusative predicates, right? If I tell you go or leave, the place is already a play. It's already obvious from the context. Then, locative. The ground must be overt, though its role may be fulfilled only by a preposition. So it is the other way around. In locative predications, we will have the ground. Amount. I am somewhere. Adjectival. The adjectival one doesn't have subtypes. I mean, if you think about it, each one of them has two subtypes, and the adjectival one doesn't have a subtype, but the coincidence may change, so in a way it does. When the figure and the ground are interpreted as inseparable, there's a relation of integration. I am boring. Boredom is something that characterizes I deeply. Soy aburrido. When the figure and the ground are interpreted as meeting at one point, there's a relation of integration. I am bored. Boredom is something that characterizes I superficially, in most cases temporarily, right? I am bored now, but it's not that it's not that this is something that's gonna be with me forever, right? Estoy aburrido. This is pretty abstract. I think you can just trust your gut when it comes to the difference between central coincidence and terminal coincidence, mostly with adjectival predicates. With the other ones, you can have different strategies, perhaps, right? Well, equative ones, you can swap them and see if they have the same referent, and that will be all that you need to recognize them. With existential ones, you have the there, right there, right? So if it has a there, it is existential. If it doesn't, it is locative. And with adjectival ones, you have the translation of soy adjective or estoy adjective, right? And now we have predicates. Main verb, possessive. Alienable predicates are terminal coincidence. The figure and the ground can be conceptualized as separate. I have a cat. I am one thing, and then the cat is another thing. And I am in a relation of possession with it. And that's it. But we're different. We're separate. Inalienable predicates, central coincidence, the figure and the ground can't be conceptualized as separate. So, she has green eyes. We can turn it into an adjectival predicate. She is green-eyed. And we can see that these adjective, the version of the have predicate in turn into an adjectival predicate will also be central coincidence, right? Ella es con sus ojos verdes. No es que los tiene nomás. O sea, no es que temporalmente tiene una relación temporal, sino que es algo que la caracteriza profundamente, ¿no? Que es parte de lo que ella es, fundamentalmente. Después, bueno, podemos pensar en el mundo real y en la realidad de las posibilidades de que, bueno, capaz perdés los ojos o perdés las manos y perdés, pero qué sé yo. Pero bueno, normalmente no. Normalmente estas son cosas que son muy nuestras. So, most humans have 2 arms. Most humans are 2-armed. The creature has 6 legs. the creature is six-legged. And have predicates, still we are analyzing the main verb, have as the main verb, right? We have eventive have, which is a light, plain monotransitive, whose meaning is conveyed through the object. So to have a lunch, it means the same as to lunch. These predicates can also be dynamic. I'm having a shower, I'm showering. It's really interesting to see all of these. This last unit, after or during the course of Gramática comparada, because it has a really strong relationship with it. Me gusta, la verdad, a mí me gusta mucho cómo están estructuradas las gramáticas, como que siento que las tres fluyen muy bien. Entonces, ver los be predicates al final tiene mucho sentido con lo que vamos a ver en gramática comparada. Now, have predicates. Still as the main verb, grammatically, it can be used as a semi-modal auxiliary, as we have seen with have to, right? The verb is slight and conveys only modality, which is why the subject merges in the embedded non-finite clause, acquires its theta role there, and then rises, right? This is a movement all over again. It's important to remember the verb has a VP. It's not within a TP. It's selected by it. We can see this if we add, for example, a negative phrase, right? The homework doesn't have to be done. So if have were inside the TP, the negative phrase wouldn't be there, right? And of course, the to is also helpful, right? Because within a TP, we cannot have another TP which is headed by that infinitival to. Oh well. It's as easy as to remember that have to equals semi-modal auxiliary, and have will head a V, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, still is the main verb, causative. This is un poco una interpretación mía, pero a la vez, bueno, medio que, o sea, el nombre es el mismo que usamos en gramática 2, pero yo como que le di una interpretación extra, pero bueno. They seem to compose a causative construction, so their internal structure may better be explained through a lexicalist syntactic approach, gramática comparada. In this case, have means cause, and the adjective is preceded by a null to be, right? So, this book had readers excited can be rephrased as this book caused readers to be excited. This book created a change of state in the readers, right? Or this book caused, an event. And now, as an auxiliary verb, it is an spectral auxiliary of perfected perfect plus any verb, or a specific use of have alongside got, right? Got as an inherent and accusative in which the theme encodes the owner and the ground encodes what's owned. So, I have got a present for you means the same as I have acquired a present for you. The thing here, the difference is that got, we must understand got as an inherent and accusative. A present is the theme, and for you is the location. And if we rephrase it as acquire, we could say that acquire is a plain monotransitive, right? So I have acquired the present, and then we have as an adjunct for you. That would be the difference. But notionally speaking, it means the same. And now I wanted to go back to, well, something that I showed yesterday about how, yeah, okay, hold on. Let me go back over here. Here, the three main dimensions of grammar, and which are pragmatics, semantics, and syntax. The positions of the elements are explained through the intentions of the speakers, the meaning of the words, or theories on their structure, right? On how things in theory should work, the theoretical order of words, right? And they all play a role all the time in everything that we say and everything that we think as well. So all of these are related with every topic that we see, but they can be more or less related, right? So we have to mention it when we, in the oral exam or in any explanation. So it's important you ask yourself how each topic relates to each dimension. Some topics will be more closely related to one of the dimensions. Here is the way that I think of it, right? How I most easily relate the topic with the dimension. Pragmatics, WH relatives, and illocutionary force in the force phrase, right? And then split CP and theme and rhyme theory, which cover, well, independent and embedded questions, conjuncts and disjuncts, which will be in topic phrases, right? So they will be part of the theme of the sentence. Inversion and fronting. Fronting, well, by fronting an element, you are putting it in a thematic position, so it will be part of the theme. And in inversion, you're putting an element in the rhematic position, in a focus phrase. So you are presenting it as new information, right? And, well, passive voice as well, because you're highlighting a complement of the predicate instead of the argument that would normally merge in spec of the VP. Now, with semantics, we see types of verbs, the theta roles. The theta roles are pretty important because theta roles depend much less, or, well, they do not depend at all on the syntactic position of the constituent, but rather the meaning of the verb and the way in which the event within the event we see the participants, which are the arguments, and that role is the one we see and we represent when we say that an argument has one theta role or the other. We can say that in most cases the spec of VP has an agent, like I killed someone, a force, like the water run, or an instrument, like the key opened the door, right? But there will be, but it will always depend on the meaning of the verb. Like in the case of receive, right? I received a letter. I is the recipient. And then, well, a movement has also to do with semantics because semi-auxiliary verbs and raising predicates are light. That is pretty important, right? If we say that the spec of VP is dethematized in these cases of a movement, then we say that it wouldn't make sense for an argument to merge there, right? And that has to do with the meaning that they have. They simply do not have enough meaning. They have to do with modality rather than with meaning, right? With projecting an event, with having some sort of lexical content reference. And then with syntax, we can also think of the types of verbs, of course, and the features, right? Edge feature, strong tense, weak tense. These are in a topic and focus phrases, right? EVP, person number in a DP, unvalued tense, spatial relation, which have to do with the predicates, and then time, aspect, modality in and voice, right? Also in the DP. And then case, of course, because case is the morphological evidence, let's say, the morphological mark of a constituent, right? The mark of the syntactic place that they occupy. All right. Now, I wanted to give you a sentence to practice. I was going to give you like 5 minutes to think, to see if you can find the examples, what this exercise asks you to do, and then well, see how much you can share. And well, I will try to give an explanation myself too. So, do you guys have any questions? If you don't, I'll just give you the 5 minutes and then we'll see what we can do. All right. I'll be back in 5 minutes, a las 5:30, and we'll see what we can do together. All right. All right. Now, let's see what we can do. We have to find an instance of focus phrase. Have you found any? Tell me and I will mark it in la presentación. With focus phrase, we have to remember that there's inversion, right? So there will be an element, which is the one that's in the edge feature, that in the specifier position and satisfies the edge feature. Then an auxiliary, a finite auxiliary, and then the subject. That's why it's inversion, auxiliary inversion. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Well said. Rarely have we witnessed.
Sí, sí. Rarely have we witnessed. Great. Bueno, toda la oración, toda la clause sería rarely have we witnessed a technological shift capable of disrupting both creative and technical sectors simultaneously. No, no raro. Uno gris. Ahí. So, and what can we say? I mean, if you had to explain it now, what would we say about focus phrase? About this case of focus phrase? Okay, great. S is negative restrictive. It is a case of negative, well, in this case, restrictive. It is a case of restrictive inversion, right? So the movement is triggered by the element that's moved is a restrictive expression. Then we can say which type and where it merges, right? So rarely is focalized because it is a restrictive expression and it holds new information. It moves to a spec of focus phrase to satisfy the edge feature, but it merges, well, first it merges and then where it moves, right? It merges in a spectral phrase selected by the tense phrase with the spectral value of imperfective habitual. It merges in spec of that spectral phrase and then moves to spec of focus phrase satisfying the edge feature. Then auxiliary inversion takes place by moving have from T, the head of the tense phrase, to the head of focus phrase, satisfying strong tense, the strong tense feature. We can say that the focus phrase holds new information. What else can we say? Here we can always add that the movements within the CP are always explained in terms of pragmatic. Well, it is the pragmatic and discourse domain, and the movements within it are explained that way, right? So the movements are merger in topic phrase will consist of constituents which have given information, and the ones that occur in focus phrase will have new information. What else can we say? Rarely have we witnessed a technology shift. Yeah. We have to say which constituent merges. We have to describe the constituent that's focalized, and we have to say where it merges, what type of word it is, and then where it moves and which feature it satisfies. Después, otra cosa que capaz le puede hacer una pregunta a la profesora tiene más que ver con el sentido común, como para expander la idea de, bueno, esto es nuevo y, bueno, esto es, esta información es nueva, esta información es vieja, ¿no? Pero creo que es cuestión de... Una cuestión de en el momento que te salga la explicación, por así decirlo. No... qué sé yo. Como una interpretación bastante sencilla igual. Sí. O sea, hay que decir con qué intención creemos que el autor de este texto hace énfasis en que es raro que haya ocurrido esto, ¿no? Es como bastante self-explanatory, let's say. Pero bueno, hay que decirlo. Hay que decir que, que el autor quiere enfatizar que es poco probable que ocurra. All right. Well, I think that's all of it. What about a passive voice? Have you found any case of passive voice? Let's see here. I think I found two, but I'm not sure. You don't need to write the whole the whole example, right? If you only write like the first words and the last ones, it will be enough. But passive voice, come on. You know how to identify passive voice.
La que yo encontré es that human capital is being systematically devalued.
Hold on. There we go. So it begins in human capital, right? The predicate.
Yeah.
Human capital is being systematically devalued. Great. Great. So what can we say about passive voice? There remains exposed. Okay, then we're gonna see that one. What can we say about passive voice? What is an item that's never present in the passive voice? The thing which makes it passive, right? With the passive voice, we said that it was a case of a movement. I mean, a movement occurs everywhere. But well, the cases of a movement that we saw here in grammar 2, right? Why? Because the constituent which would normally merge in spec of VP and then move doesn't merge there. It doesn't merge anywhere. That constituent is the notional subject, right? Pretty important to have that idea pretty clear. There's the notional subject, and then there's the grammatical subject. Then there's also the psychological subject, but it doesn't matter much to explain processes and whatnot. So the notional subject in this sentence is like an idea, right? I mean, human capital is being systematically devalued by I don't know, by I don't know in this case specifically. Well, I guess people in general do not value the human capital, right? Or the people that give people jobs, right? The people in power do not value the human capital. That is the notional subject. But the grammatical subject is the one that agrees with the head of T. In this case, the head of T is. And human capital agrees with it, and it merges as fulfilling the function of the complement of the value. What is being devalued is human capital. And then it moves upward. So we have to say that. Here in this instance of passive voice, human capital emerges as a complement of the verb devalued, and later moves to satisfy the EPP in T and agree with it, and acquire a nominative case, and that's basically it. Yeah, I mean, human capital has 5 features, the features of person or number, which are necessary to satisfy the EPP and to agree with T. That's basically it. Then we have to say all the intermediate landing sites, right? The merging site is the complement, the complement of the valued, the internal argument of the value, then moves to spec of VP, and then in this case it would also move to a spec of being, which has the value, the spectral value of I would say imperfective continuous dynamic, right? Imperfective continuous progressive. There we go. Because the value is the dynamic verb. And then it moves to a spec of TP. It's a bit strange, this sentence in particular, because I was trying to think of the active counterpart, right? So I would say people are systematically devaluing human capital, I think. That's what I would say. That's the sense, the spectral value of being, right? We can also mention that the spec of VP is dethematized, right? And we can refer to the pragmatics, right? We have talked about the syntax of the features that need to be met, the merging site, the intermediate landing site, and then the landing site. And well, we can also talk about case regarding syntax, and then semantics. We talk about the thematic role of human capital. We can say that it's the theme, and we can say that the spec of VP is dethematized. And then pragmatically, we can say that human capital is, because it is in spec of DP, it is presented as given information. It is presented as the theme of the clause, given information, and the starting point of the utterance. All right. We have to cover the 3 dimensions, right? And then the last thing was an instance of coordination. Now, what have you found here? Oh wait, hold on. I was forgetting the Celi's message. There remains something exposed. Here, I would say that it's not a passive predicate. because, well, in a passive predicate, we would never have there as we would never have the expletive there, or any expletive in the spec of TP. Here, what happens is that it is an accusative. Remain is an inherent and accusative, something somewhere. And there remains a critical gap in government regulation. A critical gap is the theme, and in government regulation is the location. And everything is presented as new information, as the ream. That's why there is introduced. And now, the instance of coordination, we're running a little bit short on time. I will make a key for all of this, though. But we have here the gap between corporate profits and workforce stability. We can say that this is an instance of coordination at the level of the DP. The coordinates are the gap between corporate profits and hold on, no. Now that I think about it, the first coordinate would be corporate profits, and the second one would be workforce stability, right? So we would have the DP, the gap, and then, I think in an adjunct of the NP, we would have the prepositional phrase between, selecting the coordinate phrase, corporate profits in the spec of the coordinate phrase. Then the head would be and with copulative, with the copulative function, let's say, copulative classification, and then workforce stability, right? So it is coordination at the level of two nominals. The coordinates are corporate profits and workforce stability. And it is copulative. What else can we say about this? I don't think we can say much about coordination really here, at least. The semantic classification, the types of the coordinates, the definition, the syntactic classification of the coordinates, and that's it. Then we may get asked how. Then, of course, we can say how we would look in a tree, which is a really good idea, right? Like what I did with interpreting between as a preposition that selects the coordinate phrase, right? And then we may get asked the rules for coordination that we saw yesterday. There were 5 of them. They're in the presentation, though, that I'm going to send. Well, yeah, I think that's it. Then we also have this other case of a cleft sentence. It is the rapid integration of generative AI that has sparked unprecedented anxiety across the global labor market. We can say the general structure, right? This is a case of cleft sentence because we find expletive there, a B, a finite B, a nominal, and then a clause. It has the function of emphasizing the rapid integration of generative AI as the first element within the clause that has meaning, and it presents all of the information is new because the spec of TP is occupied by an expletive, which merges there to satisfy the EPP feature of T and to agree with person and number with third person and plural and singular number, and acquire nominative case. And that's it. Well, we can say that it has clausal associates. Then another good idea would be to always have like the unmarked version and to say that version, like to specify, right? So while explaining rarely have we witnessed that technological shift, we could say the unmarked, this is a marked version of a predicate because we're presenting the reme before the theme, and the unmarked version would be we have rarely witnessed blah blah blah. The same with this. The rapid integration of generative AI has sparked unprecedented anxiety across blah blah blah. With the passive, we can try to make up a notional subject, right? People are systematically devaluing human capital. And then, well, yeah, then with coordination, I don't think it makes sense to do it. All right, well, let's end here. If you have, unless you have any questions, do you? Do you have any question of any kind? All right. Well, great. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening to me for 2 hours. Thank you, Nico, for the... Bueno, gracias. Ya él seguía en inglés. Gracias por la oportunidad de dar estas clases. Y nada, nos veremos con suerte en la próxima para practicar.
Vos digas en inglés y yo
Gracias,
digo en
Toby.
inglés. Pero sí, escuchá, de última podemos coordinar un tercer encuentro por el grupo de WhatsApp directamente y podemos poner una encuesta que voten. Así, bueno, les sirve también a los chicos.
Sí, coordinar el horario para que haya más gente, capaz.
De uno.
Con suerte.
Bueno, buenísimo. Voy a cortar grabación.
Uh-huh.
Estamos.